Thank you for joining us at World to Come Ministries, where we will be looking at Bible readings, Bible studies, and looking forward to the world to come.
Hello, welcome to World to Come Ministries. My name is Andrew Patch. Thank you for joining us on part 3 of our video series, The Life of David. So, kind of quickly, I want to go back and I want to talk about what we've talked about in the other 2 videos. We will put a link in the description for the videos so that way you can go back and you can watch our playlist. We created a playlist on YouTube just so you can kind of watch it in order. But we are going through 1 Samuel chapter 16, 17, 18. We're going to be talking about the life of David, what that means, who he is, how God blessed him, the mistakes that he made. We're just going to kind of go chapter by chapter in 1 Samuel, and we're going to talk about David. So as you remember, in chapter 16, David was anointed by Samuel. He was told that he was going to be the king of Israel. Then we see that David plays the harp for Saul because God caused an evil spirit to come on Saul, and David was able to play the harp and soothe that evil spirit. Verse 17, we see Goliath, the enemy of Israel, was challenging the Israelites, saying, "Somebody come fight me." And we see that the only person that actually accepted that challenge was David. David, that was his first military victory, was he took out Goliath. Chapter 18, we are going to look at the friendship between Jonathan and David. We're also going to look at Saul's envy of David. And then we're going to see David's marriage to Saul's daughter, Michal. So let's get started today and look at chapter 18, verses 1 through 4. And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day, and would let him go no more home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was given him, and gave it to David, and his garments, even to his sword, and to his bow, and to his girdle. So Jonathan loved David, and he gave him his clothes. He gave him the stuff that was for him. So I think as we progress into this, we're going to see a little bit of this is David becoming the person that he was. This is not David when he was king. This is him becoming king, building friendships with Jonathan, dealing with problems that arise with Goliath. It's kind of how he got started, because everybody has to start somewhere. Let's look at verse 5. And David went out wheresoever Saul sent him, and behaved himself wisely. And Saul sent him over the men of war, and he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass, as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the woman cried out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul, with tambourets, with joy, and with instruments of music. And the woman answered one another as they played, and said, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. So first off, you see that David is looked at favorable upon the men of war. The women adore him. And now we see that Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000. So the people are celebrating David more than Saul. Can you see where Saul might be a little envious of that? I mean, it would make me a little disturbed if I was the king, but my servant was getting more attention and more loving than I was. Let's take a look and see what happens here in verse 8. And Saul was very wroth, and they saying displeased him, and he said, They have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day forward, and it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand as at other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, and he said, I will smite David even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence. And Saul was afraid of David, because the Lord was with him, and was departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from him, and made him his captain over 1,000, and he went out and came in before the people. And David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. So a lot's happening here. The thing that I kind of point out the most, or that I see the most, is Saul tried to throw a javelin at David. I mean, this was the guy even a couple chapters earlier where Saul loved David like he was his son. David was helping Saul with his evil spirit, soothing him. And now he's going to get a javelin to the head. Saul is definitely off the track of where God put him as king. And David is starting to get on the track, but David was loved more than Saul, and Saul was ready to remove David by javelin. So let's see what happens here in the last part of the chapter here, verse 17. And Saul said to David, Behold, my oldest daughter Merab, her will I give thee to wife. Only be thou vigilant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not mine hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. So Saul goes from, let's throw a javelin at your head, to, hey, why don't you marry my daughter? I think Saul, I think we can see where he doesn't quite have his head on straight. Verse 18, And David said unto Saul, Who am I, and what is my life or my father's family in Israel, that I should be son-in-law to the king? And it came to pass at the time when Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel the Meholite to wife. When Michal Saul's daughter loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. So, he still gave him a daughter, just a different one. So, verse 21, and Saul said, I will give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twine. And Saul commanded his servant, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and all his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servant spake these words in the ears of David. And David said, Seemeth it to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed? And the servants of Saul told him, saying, On this manner speak David. And Saul said, Thus shall ye say to David, The king desireth not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. So Saul says, I'm not going to want a dowry, but I want 100 foreskins of the Philistines for his daughter. The main reason he did that is because he thought David would not get it and he would die. He wanted David out of the picture, and he thought the Philistines would put him there. So, verse 26, we see, And when the servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. Wherefore David arose and went, and he and his men, and slew the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, and he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually. Then the princes of the Philistines went forth, and it came to pass after that went forth, that David behaved himself more wisely, and all the servants of Saul, so that his name was much set by. So Saul is envious of David, but he also respects and knows that the Lord is with him. So he is careful with what he does to David. But as we see throughout this chapter, this is kind of you have the David and Goliath, and now this is the Saul versus David. So it will be interesting as the book continues to see where the life of David goes. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great day.